Hello. Today we're going to talk about King Solomon and vanity. So we're going to go to the Bible, first to the book of 1 Kings, the 11th chapter. And we're going to start reading there. And it says, "But King Solomon loved many foreign women, as well as the daughter of Pharaoh, the women of the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Edomites, the Soamites, the Hittites, from the nation of whom the Lord had said to the children of Israel, you shall not intermarry with them, nor they with you. Surely they would turn your hearts after their gods." Solomon clung to these in love. Okay, now let's go to the book of Ecclesiastes. Okay. Ecclesiastes 2. I'm going to start from 1 to 4 and then 17. And it says, "I said in my heart, come, now I will test you with mirth, therefore enjoy pleasure. But surely this is also vanity. I said of laughter, madness, and of mirth, what does it accomplish? I search in my heart how to gratify my flesh with wine, while guiding my heart with wisdom, and how to lay hold of folly, till I might see what was good for the sons of men under the heaven all the days of their lives." Then verse 17 says, "Therefore I hated life, because the work of that was done under the sun was distressing for me, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind." So he said, for all is vanity and grasping for the wind. So I want to read you something too. Okay, it says vanity, something futile, empty, meaningless. Solomon refers to it as a striving after wind. It's idolatry, it's wickedness, it's being not only evil, but vain. It's mischief and iniquity. Now, these are the words of the preacher Solomon. He's a preacher and a king. Verse 17 was so significant because here's the wisest man on earth that said he hated life. You know, he had all the riches, all the fame, all the name, and he was the wisest man on earth. But at the end of his journey, he began to hate life because he realized all that he had was all vain. It was all vanity. Though he had all this stuff, he was unhappy. He was very unhappy. And I believe the reason why he was unhappy because he was in defilement to God, because the Lord had warned Solomon not to marry those foreign women. He had told him more than once not to marry those foreign women. And Solomon out blatantly disobeyed God and intermingled and married those foreign women. Not only did he do that, but he allowed them to worship their other gods, and he began to worship their gods on his courts. So he was in total defilement to God. Even though he was the wisest man on earth, he was also the foolish man on earth. Because how are you going to just out blatantly disobey God when he told you specifically more than one time not to marry these foreign women? I believe the reason why everything became vain to him, though he had much, and he was the richest king of all the kings on the earth, the wisest man on the earth, and he had much, but he loved the thing that God hated. God hated those. He didn't hate those women, but he hated the gods that they had, because they were disrespecting the true and living God, and those women were worshiping other gods because they wasn't familiar with Solomon's God, and if they were, they didn't want to worship him. So they worshiped the gods that they wanted to worship, and so God didn't want him to marry those women because he knew those women would turn his heart away from God. But Solomon, so hard-headed and so thick-headed, he did it anyway. Now, the difference between his father and him, David was a man after God's own heart. David feared God, and that makes a difference when you fear God. Solomon had no fear for God. Now, his daddy did, but he didn't. Solomon walked with God, but there was no fear of God. And when you don't fear something, you don't take reference to what you don't fear. And I think that was Solomon's problem. He didn't fear God, so he didn't feel the need, to obey God, because he wanted to do what he wanted to do, because he didn't fear him anyway. Even though he walked with him, he didn't have fear for him. Now, David was a different case, because God said that David was a man after his own heart. God said that. David loved God. David worshiped God, and David didn't switch gods. And that's the difference between Solomon and David. Now, David died at the age of 70. Solomon died at the age of 60. But Solomon reigned for 40 years. Now, I'm not sure how many years David reigned, but he died at the age of 70. And it displeased God that Solomon would disobey him and to marry these foreign women, even though he had all this stuff, and he had everything. God blessed him. You talking about a gift? He gifted him and David. They were gifted men. David played skillfully in music. David had many women, many wives, concubines. Solomon had many wives too and concubines. They were rich men. They were gifted. He gifted them with wealth, with women, with fame, with a name. Only thing he asked is that they loved him more than anything, and that they served him and no other God. That was something simple back then. They had everything. But Solomon understood. But I think Solomon's problem, the thing I want to say about Solomon's problem was he didn't fear God and he didn't love God, and he was not a man after God's own heart. And so the reason why Solomon couldn't follow through or switch gods, because he didn't love the God he had. He knows his father did. He knows his father walked with God, so he tried that God, but he didn't love the God that he had. So it was easier for him to switch gods. Not only that, after a length of time, Solomon understood that everything under heaven, I got all this stuff, all these women, but I'm finding out it's all vanity. It's all vain. I'm not saying to have riches, to have stuff is vain, but it is when you take God out of the picture. Anything you take God out of the picture becomes vain. It becomes vanity. It becomes mischief. It becomes empty. It becomes void. It becomes non-effective, because you took God out of the picture. Though you might have much. That's why so many people that are rich, they take the gun and put it to their head and they kill themselves, because they were empty. They live without God. They had the fame, the name, and riches, but they live without God. The non-presence of God is dangerous. Though you may have much, without God you are nothing. Without God you have nothing. So that's why I say, Solomon was empty in the end, because he put everything, not everything, but he put those women before God and lost God and started to worship other gods. So he lost the presence of God and he lost God in the end. So Solomon's end was worse, because God tore the temple into rent, tore it in half, because of Solomon's defilement. So the presence of God left Solomon. He no longer had anything, because